So today I'm going to talk a little bit around a topic that everyone's sort of pretty interested in, and that's kind of how we become more resilient, or how I sort of look at it as how we respond to what we perceive as threats, the sort of stress response, and how that influences either whether we decide to take that challenge on, or we sort of move into avoidance behaviours, or we look for a distraction so that we don't have to confront that challenge. I'm going to talk about it in terms of resilience, and some of the questions I've been asked are, can we become more resilient? Is it something that we're born with? How do we go about developing it? These sort of things. So the simple answer is yes, you can become more resilient. It's not really that hard once you understand it and you're willing to confront some of your challenges and put yourself into sort of uncomfortable situations where you can grow, develop, adapt, and adapt, and get the tools and the practical applications you need just to improve your resilience and understand how you respond to pressure and stress. So I'm going to do this in a number of videos. So the first one we're going to sort of talk about is your expectation and how that influences your resilience. So the first thing that I want to cover is kind of the expectation influences a lot of your motivation and how you go about overcoming problems as they arise. So the expectation piece is hugely important, and that primes you for how you're going to confront these problems. So recently I did a Road Trail Invitational 350 mile, which is around 550 kilometers. And going into that, rather than looking at it as this is a really long race, I'm not sure whether I'm capable of covering those sort of distances. I looked at it as like, well, okay, so based on what I've done previously, so there's some context there, and I'll talk about that again at a later point. I can cover this in 6 to 7 days, maybe 8 days. So I planned on doing it within the 10 days that was allocated, and around sort of 8 days as the sort of longer duration it would take, and planned for 9 to 10 days in case things went quite poor and there were some things I hadn't planned for. So my expectation was not so much can I finish this race. My expectation is, okay, I can do it within 6 to 8 days. If things go worse, I'll go to 9 to 10 days. So as I went in, I was looking at, okay, how much distance do I need to cover a day? How much food do I need to take for those sort of days? So in my planning, I'm not looking at, can I do it? It's, okay, well, how fast can I do it? What's the time it's going to take me? So it's no longer if, it's what's required. And that kind of is in line with sort of active optimism, where when you're looking at something, it's not really wondering if you can get there, it's knowing you can get there. And this is something I experienced a lot throughout my military career. So I'm on this race and I'm going along. So I've entered this race and I get there and I'm prepared. I've got to fly back from the endpoint at this small village inside the Alaskan interior on the other side of the Alaskan range. So I wasn't aware that there was only a couple of flights a week, or how often you could get a bush flight. So my expectation changed from this is the period I've got to do it to I've got to get there within 7 days, otherwise I'm going to miss the return flight and I'm going to miss my flight home. So now it's completely gone the other way, that I need to get there within 7 days. So now it's how much distance do I need to cover within 7 days? And that expectation of getting there within that time, that's what drove my motivation. So I pushed along the trail quite hard, and every time there was a little bit of a setback, it was more, okay, well, I've got to try and make that time up now. So I've got to the point where it's no longer a question about getting there. Now it's a question of, can I get there within this time frame? And with that change in expectation and priming myself to get there within the time, that drove me along the trail. And the idea of quitting never entered my mind. It was more, I need to keep going at these speeds to get there. As it turned out, I turned up a little bit late, but there was a number of bush flights, so I was able to get home without any issues. But that expectation is really big. So it drives your motivation. So if you have a poor expectation, or you go in thinking you're not capable of something, or your self-talk tells you you're not going to be able to do something, then that drives a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you'll achieve the outcome you expect. Okay, so that's where your motivation is, and you start to filter your information that you're getting back to support your original expectation or what you expect to happen. And that kind of just reinforces what you're seeing, your original expectation and your outcomes. And that's why you kind of, if you expect something bad to happen, it happens because you look for that information to support your thoughts, and that kind of keeps reinforcing your self-talk into that negative pattern. So even when we look at it as your stress response, so some of the research that's been done recently around stress has shown that people who are under a lot of stress but perceive that to be a good thing, so it's a positive, and this is something I experienced in my military period is that there is growth, there is post-traumatic growth. So if you expect positive outcomes under these periods of high stress for long durations, it actually has no impact on your physiological, biological function or your long-term well-being. So you come out of it stronger, having more tools based on the fact that you went in with an open sort of growth mindset, expecting to have minimal impact. Where if you go in thinking that stress is a negative impactor and the expectation that it's going to have a lot of negative impacts on you, then you'll see all these negative health effects. Your cardio disease risk factors go up, your mental health declines, all these things that are or what we think is associated with stress starts to manifest and happen based around your actual expectation. So you kind of are the manifesting agent for these negative outcomes, even to the point where people with high stress and believed it to be a positive thing had better health outcomes than people with low stress who were more neutral or thought stress was a bad thing. So your expectation is going to drive your outcomes when it comes to resilience and stress management and how you respond to what you see as threats and you process that information going on. So the first and most important thing you can do is change the way you think about adversity and going into these challenges, is to start thinking that this is an opportunity for me. This is going to be a good thing for me. I'm going to grow. And then you're going to start to filter information to see the opportunities. You're going to start to grow, and you're going to see a lot of these negative things disappear, and you'll be willing to take your challenge on, confront it, and then you're going to come out the other side as a better person. So hopefully that helps. You got an understanding of expectation and how that's going to prime you for your outcomes. Okay, so for more, stay tuned, and I'll move into a couple of the other factors that are involved in resilience.